Hello, my knitting friends. First, I have to say it's such a pretty day here that I have the window open, so my hair is blowing around a little bit, which might look a little odd, but I just couldn't close it. So, thank you so much for joining me today. I think sometimes I forget to identify myself. I am Romi Hill, and I am the designer behind Designs by Romi. And this is the second live of my Special Skein Knit Along for 2023. And it's so lovely to see you in the comments. Thank you for coming. Um, wow, so let's see what to start with today. First, I know that lots of you have been knitting along in the Special Skein Knit Along, and I saw a question about a third pattern. Yes, so the story has always been that there are two patterns currently in the collection, and I am knitting the third one along with you all as you're knitting in the Special Skein Knit Along. So, so yes, there is going to be a third pattern by the end of the year. So it needs to be tested and tech edited and everything, and then it will come out and be a part of your Special Skein collection. So since we were talking about that, here is my progress so far. So I was going to share this with you and a little bit about my process so far. So you all were here before, I think, when I was choosing a skein, choosing a color. So this was the skein that won because dear Terry pointed out that she had a lot of 380 yard skeins in her stash. And so that would be a perfect size. And I thought, lots of people are always saying to me, I only have these smaller skeins in my stash. So I decided the 380 yard skein. That was the one that I was going to do. And this is from Sweet Georgia. So this is a wedge shaped shawl, and this is the first wedge that I've been working on. So I am going to transition over a little bit so you can see what it looks like up close. So here is my wedge. This is the end here, and it's got this really cool little edging part here. So this is the bottom of the wedge. And you can see here, I have cast on some extra stitches, and that is going to be the next wedge. So if any of you have knit my other patterns that are kind of set up this way, I have some others like Swoop and Artesian, and there are other ones that are set up this way, Star Showers. So this is my first wedge. So I'm pretty happy with what the first wedge looks like. It's shaped with German short rows. I'm pretty happy with what the first wedge looks like and with the amount of yarn that it's used and the length and everything. So now what I'm working on is the placement of each additional wedge as it goes along. And I want them to be a little bit offset as it's going along. So I did one. I'm not very happy with this, so I'm actually going to take this last row out, which is the beginning of the next wedge here, and work on it again. So here's the process that I usually use. I like to do kind of a cool looking edging for it. So this is what's called a Horn of Plenty edging. And so I based the whole wedge on this little piece right here, and it's going to be a triangular shawl. So basically, this is one side of the triangle along here that cast on, and then this is the other side along here. And so these wedges will grow longer along this side and shorter along this side, and then the top will get finished off. So here's how this goes. So first, if you were at my Zoom before, you will have seen the little swatches I was doing. So I swatched this. I kind of edited it so it would fit my needs. And after that, I just took out my swatches. I unraveled everything and I decided, so there are 18 rows in this little edge part here. So I decided how many short rows I was going to have across. So 8 short rows across because there are 9 right side rows. So the first right side row doesn't have any short rows in it. And then each subsequent right side row does have a short row. And the rest of this patterning is based on that little motif at the end here. So that's the first part. And I wrote this out. I weighed my yarn. This skein was a little bit short, so it's supposed to be 100 grams, but it's actually 95.5 grams. And that is probably because I'm in the high desert and I bought this in Vancouver, BC, which is a lot more humid than hereabouts. And I do tend to lose yarn weight because things dry out. So, so this ended up at 95.5. And I'm not sure about the yardage. The yardage may not be short, but I'm just going to go by how much weight I have. So after I did my first wedge here, I weighed my yarn, and it turns out that this wedge takes about 9.5 grams. So that's like an even 10, but I'm going to leave some extra for the bind off, and I always leave a little bit of extra yarn so that someone works it a little bit larger than I do, then you have a little bit of yarn to play with. So I see Nancy Stender. Yay, you totally understand. Um, Things are so dry here, the weight is really off. Okay, let's see. Just want to make sure that I haven't missed any questions or anything. It's lovely to see where all of you are from. Okay, so that's where I'm from. That's where I'm about. And so basically what's going to happen now is I'm just going to tank back on this last row here and figure out kind of a different placement for this because I actually like the wedge. I just don't like where the second wedge landed with respect to the first wedge. So that's my next thing I'll be messing around with. This type of shawl tends to be a lot of messing around up front. And then after I've done all the design work up front, I get to play with just like doing the wedges, which is really fun because I'm an audiobook knitter. So I just sit there listening to an audiobook and knitting away in my happy space. So I was talking a little bit about a yarn scale. This is my favorite yarn scale. This is, I got this one because it also measures troy ounces. So it's an O house. You probably don't need something like that because unless you want to measure troy ounces as well. But it's a great little scale, and that's my favorite one. And I have some other scales lying around too. And I find that weighing my yarn is incredibly, incredibly helpful. So if you don't have one, I highly recommend having a yarn scale. Okay, so the main question I want to answer today is all about my Globe Mellow shawl. And this is what my Globe Mallow shawl looks like. I know a bunch of you have knit this, and it's the edging that was the question. MA, I think I saw you in here saying hello. Yes, I did. Not everybody loves scallops on the edge. So MA asked how to make this into something less scallopy. So that is the main thing I'm going to talk about today. And you can see when you're looking at this bind off here that the motif here is pretty well set apart from this middle portion here that becomes the scallop. So I'm going to talk about how you would make this center portion here into something that's nice and stable for the edge. So the biggest issue here is edge stability. This type of scallop will give you a great stability because it releases the tension that you get from plain stockinette yarn or plain stockinette stitch. So when you're going to replace something like this, you're going to need something else that's going to also reduce the tension in the stockinette stitch and allow it to lay flat and not curl up. Okay, so let's take a little bit of a look here. I'm going to talk a little bit about the chart. Okay, so again, specifically with Globe Mallow, so you can see on chart B where it begins to get wider up here. So that is because I've added these two extra yarn overs right there. So that is the beginning of this center section here turning into a scallop. So you can see down here on chart C, this whole area here is growing much faster than this area is decreasing. So this is the area right here with those extra stitches. That is what's going to become the scallop. And that is this area right in here. Okay, so looking over, okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just highlight the rows that I'm going to mess with. So I'm going to mess with those in there and this area in here. I'm going to kind of change a little bit so I can make it stable but get rid of a scallop. So a scallop is formed by those extra stitches and all of these extra stitches down here. So what I want to do is get rid of the extra increases and make this into a stable area. Because if I keep all of these extra increases in here, then you're still going to have a little bit of fabric that's going to pooch out up at the top there, and it's not going to be a very straight edge. So over here, I'm going to start at this row right here. Okay, on the Globe Mallow shawl, the one thing to look out for is the center spine. So in the spine here, I have done a little something different because of this big scallop here gives me lots of extra stitches. So I just put a scallop at the top of the spine as well. So if you're going to get rid of those scallops and those extra increases, then you're going to need to keep increasing um, along the spine, one stitch on either side of the spine. So you can do that either by making yarn overs. So it's going to be a yarn over all the way up as you're going at the spine. And then you'll have something that looks like, here's your spine, and you're going to have yarn overs all the way up like this. Okay, so you're going to see that it's going to be a little bit triangular like this. You're going to have little bits of triangular material on either side. So what I would do instead is replace the scallop. If you're going to replace it, I would start doing a centered double increase in the middle here for the last chart. So that's going to still increase at the same rate. So in other words, what you're looking for is an increase of 1 on either side of the spine. So to keep your point. So if you do a centered double increase for 1, 2, 3, 4 rows, you'll be fine at the spine here. Okay. So I'm going to turn this into garter stitch because that is going to give us a nice stable edge for the shawl. So what I've done is just kind of knit up a tiny swatch in heavier yarn to show what that would look like. So all I did here was I started on this chart right across here. The first thing I did was take those 2 extra yarn overs out that I added because we don't need those anymore. We're not going to add copious quantities of extra stitches in here because we're going to get rid of that scallop. So that's starting down here. And I worked this first stitch here in garter stitch. So that means I purled along and then on the wrong side, and then this stitch right here is worked in garter stitch. So you can see that right at the bottom here. And then I went down to chart C. So instead of doing this extra area here where I add all of these stitches to make the material pooch up over the, to automatically expand and help with that scallop, I took that out, and the only thing I'm doing here is increasing 1 stitch on either side here based on the yarn overs. So this whole area is rewritten there. And you can see here that the only thing I've done is for every time over here that it's decreased, there's an increase in the center. So it's now balanced. So I haven't added any extra stitches. So if you were to chart this out, it would be the same 12 stitch repeat instead of having gotten larger. So there are no increases in here in the middle. So at the end here, this is to the end of this chart. So if I were going to work this, I would do 1 more row because I think that this needs to come to a point up at the top here. So let me show you what I would do at the top. In the bind off of the original shawl, the bind off takes care of this little motif here coming to a point. So because your bind off is going to be different, you're going to want to do something about that. And just going to go along here. Let me take that out. Okay. So I wanted that to come to a point. I'm going to have it come to a point on that side as well. And then I'm just going to work across here. So I put in another yarn over. So every time you decrease, you want to increase because you want to keep the stitches completely even. You don't want any extra increases or decreases. So here is where I want this to come to a point. Um, because the pattern has shown a centered double decrease throughout, I'm just going to do the same thing in the middle here. So this is the row that I'm just adding at the end. So I'm going to do another center double decrease at the end here, just so it will look like the rest of the pattern. And then I'm going to go across here. So you can see this garter stitch area is nice and stable and nothing is curling. So that's what we're after. We do not want anything to curl. Okay, I'm just going to get rid of that other marker now. Okay. So I'm going to bind off on the wrong side. And that's going to create another garter ridge along here. Get some more yarn out. So I'm just going to do a plain stretchy bind off. And it's going to be in garter stitch all the way across. And I like to do my edges through the back loop. So my favorite stretchy bind off is just to get 2 stitches on my right needle, and then I'm going to stick them back onto my left needle and knit 2 together through the back loop. So it's a great all-purpose bind off. It takes almost twice as much yarn to use this as a bind off as it does to use a traditional bind off. And that's because in essence, you're knitting 2 rows as a bind off instead of just one. Because you're doing these stitches across here and then you're actually decreasing out rather than passing the stitch over. And it gives you a nice, super stretchy edge. So let's just get across here. I'm speeding through, kind of trying to see if there are any questions over in the comments. Okay. I think I've caught up. Just move this out of the way. Alrighty. Almost to the end here. And then you won't have to be bored by watching me bind off anymore. Alrighty. So hopefully all of you are having nice weather like I am. There's a small lightning fire, but it's in the midst of all the other burn scars around here, so hopefully they'll get it out soon. Okay, almost to the end. So you can see that looks pretty stable already. Nothing's curling, and that's what you want to see. So you want as little curl as possible. So this is what we have. And you can actually block it so that is more of a point, like that. So in other words, if you don't want to weave your blocking wires in and out, that can be a natural point. These can be natural points. But as I suspect, MA would like more of a nice straight edge like that. So there are a couple ways to do that. Um, Definitely do not use pins at the points, and that will keep these from being a scallop. So you can weave in and out along here with a blocking wire, and then when you stretch it out, just make sure that it's pinned nice and straight across there. Or you can use those cool little blocking combs. You've probably seen them. They've got lots of pins in them. And you can use those as well, and those will make a nice straight edge for you. So, so MA, you're a plain MA, not a plain Jane. So anyway, yeah, so that will give you a nice straight edge across there and instead of the scallop. So the biggest thing to remember when doing this is check the spine, because in my patterns, I often will do like a little something or other on the spine, and that can be done because I'm adding all those extra stitches in there. So if you want to take out scallops and you're reducing in this area, then you want to pay a little bit of extra attention to the spine and just make sure that that you're not going to like that you're not going to have any binding in that area. Okay, so what you'll get on the spine, it will look like this. That will be the end of the spine. So you'll have that triangle of garter stitch. And again, I mentioned before, my preference would be not to have the spine show. So in other words, not to have it look like this, like that, but you may have a different preference. I would I would have it look like this instead. So you'd have, if you use those center double increases along the spine, then you'll just get a nice bunch of solid material. So let's see. So Nancy says the tip of the spine. I'm not sure what you mean, but so on Globe Mallow, this is the spine. Basically, the spine is the same as the other scallops. Because I've added so many extra stitches in here, then I was able to just increase along here, and the shaping for the last chart changes. So this is the last chart here that shows that there is a spine. So as you're going, you're just going to have to be cognizant of the spine, and that you have to keep those increases going, or you'll have it pull across. So in other words, like you don't want it to be kind of it would pull weirdly. Um, you'll see when you get there if you try to edit that. Okay, alrighty. So so different patterns will be different, of course, but mostly when I do a scallop, it's because it comes from these added stitches. So look for those. If you're doing a pattern of mine, look for those added stitches in there. And usually you'll be able to see fairly clearly in the chart where those stitches are added. So you can go in there and just kind of take out the extra increases and do your own more plain edging along there. So you should be able to see it fairly well. Okay. Alrighty. So I have other stuff to show you today too. Um, I know some of you are planning on going to the Sierra Nevada yarn crawl. Um, and I have some really sad news. Of course, I mean the crawl is happening, But for those of you who don't know and who know Aubrey, who's the owner of Knits and Knots Tahoe and Knits and Knots Minden, she lost her daughter this past Saturday. So her daughter was a bright, shining, wonderful light. And it was very unexpected. And so her hours have been a little weird this week. And so, yeah, I mean, if you are coming to the yarn crawl, um, just, I don't know, come by and give her some love because they're some of the, like she and her family they're really nice people. You may have met her daughter if you've been in the shop before because her daughter was homeschooled and so she was always with Aubrey. So that's my sad news of the day. I do have a little preview for you. You can see over here over my shoulder. And I know Terry Miles, you have been wanting to see this. This is the yarn crawl pattern for this year. And so this is the kit that's going to be available at Knits and Knots Minden. So if you're coming to the Sierra Nevada Yarn Crawl, it's a local dyer who has done this, and it's in two different bases. It's a tweed and like a yak and wool sock yarn as well. So there, it's a really cool couple of bases, and that's archaic fibers. So those kits will be available at Knits and Knots Minden. And Mary Ann said, um, so yes, Mary Ann, I am changing the numbers. Absolutely, I am changing the numbers. Um, in I am keeping the Okay, let me transition back here. I'm absolutely changing the numbers. Okay, so so you can see in this area here, this is the area that I worked on. So I'm taking out the extra increases. So in order to keep a scallop from forming, you have to completely take out the extra increases. So I'm just keeping this stable. So instead of this expanding into a much wider repeat here, I kept it stable at 12 stitches. So to keep from forming the scallop like this, keep the repeat stable. So this, if I kept all of those increases in there, then what I would get is something that would look more like that. So, and I don't want that. I want a straight edge across. So in order to get that straight edge, you're going to cut down the number of stitches in here. So you can see if you're taking a look at the chart here, there's an extra 2 increases here. So it actually starts up here. I added 2 increases right up here. And I've added 2 extra increases on these 2 rows here. And then I have added 4 extra yarn overs across here, plus this little increase in the middle. So that's another 2 stitches. So across this row, there's 6 extra stitches added. So that's all going away. And this would fit into just 12 stitches across. So I hope that that makes sense. Yes, the inner V is completely and totally solid. So you can see here, it's totally solid. This is that inner V part. That's totally, completely solid. No extra yarn overs. Okay, so Dee, I'm really happy you like that. They're going to be, so there are going to be kits in this colorway, and then also kits, a blue kit and a green kit. So, and I'm sure that they will end up on the website too. So if you weren't able to grab one, I'm sure you'll be able to get one, even if you don't get to go to the crawl. Okay, so yay. Hi, yearning for a smile. You caught me. Um, okay, so now I have one more thing. Um, this has been going really slow, but if you follow me on Instagram, you've probably seen that I do a lot of technique reels and like just little short reels on stuff that I'm working on and the techniques that I use. And this is going to be a bucket hat. So the bottom part here is it's got a little picot, like a folded picot edge. So I'm just going to transition back over, just kind of update you on everything that's going on. So it's got this little picot edge here. You can see it's integrated. So this was the cast on edge, and it's a folded hem, and then it has braids across here. These are two Vickel braids, and then there's going to be a third one up here. Marianne asked what the shawl is on the left. So the purple shawl is my mystery shawl from 2023. So this is going to progress a little bit faster now that I have finished the sample for the yarn crawl. And I know I'm showing this mostly because I know Kathleen loves braids. I don't think she's here, but later on she'll get to see the braids. Okay, and one more thing. This is a little bit of a shorter one today. So I'm going to also post this on Instagram today as a reel. So this is one of my favorite ways to make kind of a more stable ribbing, just for fun here. Um, this is three knits and one purl, and on the front side, the purl is slipped. So let me show you how to do this. Oh, Janet, yes, yes. I should have I should have talked about this. Um, Janet asked what kind of yarn I'm using. Um, so if you have knit my stuff for a while, you'll know that I work with a River Keeping Warm a lot. And this is their new yarn. They have a couple of weights. They call it bread and butter yarn. And this is their Aran weight yarn. So it's 100% merino. And I have really, really abused this. Like I have swatched and ripped and swatched and ripped and swatched and ripped this so many times, and it did not pill. So I have high hopes for the wearability of this. It's really lovely and soft, and I highly recommend it. It's grown in the US and spun in the US. Okay, so back to this. This is This is a ribbing that I use when I kind of want more of a low impact ribbing. So if you're looking at it, it's not going to pull in as much as a regular ribbing. It's a lot more stable. So here is how I do that. This is knit flat, but if you were to knit this in the round, it would be very similar. When I'm knitting a ribbing flat like this, I am not knitting this with a selvage stitch. So, but I do twist the outside stitch. but there's no selvage stitch. So for instance, if I could use this for a sweater with a slit in the side of it or something like that. So on the front here, it's 3 stitches and then slip one purlwise with the yarn in front. And that mimics the look of a purl stitch across here. And I'm just going to do that all the way across here. So you can see it's just kind of mimicking the look of that purl stitch. And this is really nice. If you saw my reel yesterday, I showed 2x2 ribbing with the slipped stitches in there. And that was one where you should probably hide the back because you can see the floats. But in this particular case, because that it's only that one purled column, you're just going to slip with yarn in front, and then the back looks really nice too. So I think the back looks just as nice as the front, in fact. So, and it's super, super stable. It does not curl. So that's like the big thing about this ribbing, I think, is it's really kind of low key, does not curl, it's very stable. So then when you're going along on the back, you're just going to purl those 3 stitches that was the knit column, and then knit that slipped stitch. And just go across as usual. So you can see along the back here, you have 1 knit stitch for every 2 rows because of the stitches are slipped. So I really love this knit. I love this ribbing, and I'm actually incorporating it into a pattern soon. Just get to the end here. Okay. So here is what it looks like on the front side again, and then on the back side. So if you get untidy stitches along the sides here on your ribbing for this, I suggest pulling apart like this. And that's just going to tidy up the stitches on either side of that purl and slipped column. So I'm just going to kind of pull these apart. And this would block out actually. So, but if you want to see what it looks like beforehand, that's going to give you a really good idea. And up here you can see up close what it looks like. It's hard to tell that that's slipped. It just sort of mimics a purl stitch. So this is for a project where you might not want the ribbing to be super tight. It doesn't pull in as much as regular 1x1 ribbing would when you go down a needle size. Okay, let's see. So I didn't know you could hear my birds in the background. The birds are really happy because it's breezy and um, the weather's really nice. Okay. Yeah, Dee, I agree. I love the backside too. I just think that looks so cool. That would look so neat as a ribbing, wouldn't it? Along the bottom, just like um, that one sort of elongated knit stitch. So yeah, so 2 options, but I think that the front and the back both look really beautiful. So, if you were going to fold something, like if you're going to have a collar or something like that, this gives you a really nice stable edge. And it also just looks really pretty and decorative across there. So I think it's kind of a win-win. Okay. Alrighty. So, so as I was saying, a little bit of a shorter one today, unless anybody has any questions or anything like that. So I'm going to blather a little bit more and just see if anyone has any extra questions. And let's see, Marianne, would a cuff would be lovely in that, I think. So I would go down maybe a needle size to do that, the edging that I showed you. Um, I I go so for any type of ribbing, I will go down 1 to 2 needle sizes, and that's going to give you it's going to make it much neater because when you're doing ribbing, it always gets a little bit looser because you're moving your yarn back and forth. So from front to back to do the knits and pearls. So you generally want to go down at least a needle size when you're using it for an edging. In the middle of a project, it's not as obvious because you're just going to block it out and it'll be straight. But along the edge, you'll want to go down a little bit. So, okay, let's see. Any other questions? Possibly. So, JL, Joy asked a shawl color pullover. Maybe. I don't know. It's possible. Oh, and I see what percentage of stretch would you say it reduces by? That's a really hard question to answer. Um, so it acts more like just a plain stockinette stitch. Um, it's going to pull in just a little bit more, but if you were looking at like a silhouette, it would gently decrease. So if you're looking at like the bottom of a sweater, instead of how some ribbing will come in, or you see those schematics where it shows the ribbing coming in. This is more of a gentle shape, so you could actually block it straight and you wouldn't get any type of flaring at the bottom. It would actually just kind of stay straighter, or you could let it pull in just a little bit. So it's not, I don't think I would use it for a sock or something that has to stay up if you are using a yarn that doesn't have a lot of memory to it or something like that. But for sweaters or other things where you don't want to hang up on your hip or your behind or something like that, this is a really good ribbing to use. Let's see, any other questions? Okay. So Judy asked if I'm going to do another live for Peony Garden. Would you like me to? Do you have questions that you would like answered for Peony Garden? Let me know, and I would be happy to. I can I could show you blocking probably. So yes, I will say yes, I am going to do another one for Peony Garden. Um, just stand by and I will send a link. And if you're part of my newsletter, everybody will get a link, and I will talk about blocking or other questions or anything you want me to talk about. Okay. Okay. So yes, yes, blocking. Okay. So Joy, but like a cuff or a brim if it wasn't stretchy enough. Um, so I would definitely use this for a cuff. I don't like cuffs that are too tight. It really depends on your preference. I would suggest that you swatch it. That I know people don't like to swatch. I hope you don't mind swatching. But I think that's the only way to really tell how much of a difference it would make to you. We all have slightly different knitting styles, so if we're getting down into like nitty-gritty percentages, it's hard to say. For me, I like it for cuffs and bottoms of sweaters and necklines because I don't like tight clothes. So I really like this because it tends to hang straighter. So sewing in the center end. Oh, okay, Judy. Okay, got it. Yes, I am team swatch as well. So, yep. Okay. Yes, Judy, I will absolutely do another peony garden live. Okay, any other questions? Okay, okay. I think that's about it for today, just to make sure. Anyway, um, yeah, so thank you so much for joining me. If you have questions about anything, truly, just drop me a line. I do a lot of little tiny reel tutorials on Instagram. So if you are interested in those and you would like to, if you'd like to see like little tiny techniques and stuff like that, let me know and I can add one. And I'm going to get back to, I have to sort of, I've been revamping my YouTube stuff because um, I was working with like a social media consultant who said that my YouTube things need to be better. So I've been kind of working on revamping those, and once I've gotten my format kind of back together, I will add lots more teeny tiny tutorials. So there will be those as well. And my big thing is I really want this to be accessible to everybody, and I want you to feel like you can ask me questions, and and I will answer them. So let's see. Okay. Thank you. Thank you all for joining me. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say, this looks like it's kind of a complicated pattern, but it's actually a three-page pattern. It's a really short pattern, and and it also has an Icelandic bind off in it. So for those of you who've always wanted to try that technique, here's your chance. So Icelandic bind off, and it has no scallops on the edge, MA. So I think maybe right up your alley. Um, anyway, thank you again, and thank you again for joining me. And I hope to see you all soon around social media. There is another Special Skein Zoom this Saturday. So I'll watch your newsletter. It was the same sign up link for all of them. And I will also send out um, just a reminder to everybody. And if you have any other questions or anything, Ravelry and Facebook groups are good places to ask, or you can just email me at help@designsbyromi.com and I will get back to you. So anyway, thank you again. And I hope to see you all soon and maybe, in person someday. So thanks, everybody. Take care. Have a lovely evening, and I will see you soon. Bye bye.